This story was shared on our /nosleep, posted by Reddit user Arthix. It's titled, "My Wife's Family is Scary." I don't really know how to start this, so I'm just going to tell it the way it happened. My name is Joseph. My wife is Natalie. We have been married for 3 years and together for 5. The first year of our marriage was good, really good. The last 2 years have not been, and that matters for what happened, because you will see how they knew things they should never have known. I never wanted to meet her family. Her parents were polite in a way that never once felt warm. Her dad barely spoke to me, even at our own wedding. Something about their house put me on edge the first time I stepped inside it. I could never explain exactly why. It was just a feeling that the walls were paying more attention to me than walls should. So when the phone rang last week and I watched Natalie's hands shake before she even said a word, I already knew I was going back there. Her sister Aaliyah had died in a car accident. The drive over was silent except for Natalie crying. I felt that same old dread the closer we got, as if my body remembered something my mind did not want to. Her mom opened the door before we even knocked. She pulled Natalie inside, and the two of them cried together in the doorway while I stood one step behind, unsure if I was allowed to be part of it. That is when I felt it for the first time. Standing in that entryway, waiting to be let in, it felt like something was watching me from inside the wall itself, somewhere between the old wallpaper and whatever lay behind it. Her dad did not get up when we came in. "Why did you bring him?" he said to Natalie, not to me, as if I was not standing 3 feet away. He looked right at me, the first time in over a year, then looked away without another word. The funeral was small, just the 4 of us and 2 church workers. No neighbors, no friends of Aaliyah's, no extended family. I kept looking at the empty pews instead of listening to the service, wondering where 30 years of someone's life goes when nobody shows up to say goodbye. I did not ask. Something about that church told me not to. Dinner that night was back at the house. The 4 of us sat at a table that felt far too big for so few people. For a while, it almost felt normal. Then a cold feeling hit me out of nowhere. I looked up at the ceiling and swore something was pressed flat against it in the shadowed corner, watching the table. I blinked and it was gone. That is when Natalie's mom set down her fork and said gently, "It's all right. We already know about the divorce." The table went completely silent. Natalie stared at her. "Mom, what? You don't have to protect him, sweetheart. We've known for a while." I looked at Natalie's dad. He was not surprised at all. "We know a great deal about what happens in your house, Joseph," he said. "We've known for a long time." I did not sleep that night. Around 2 in the morning, I heard humming coming from somewhere below the guest room floor. It was slow and rocking. Underneath it, so faint I almost convinced myself I had imagined it, was Aaliyah's name, hummed like the first line of a lullaby. In the morning, I asked Natalie if the house had a basement. "We don't have a basement, Joseph. We never have." The next afternoon, while Natalie helped her mom sort through Aaliyah's things, I wandered the house alone. I found a door at the end of the hallway that I did not remember from the wedding. It was locked. A small brass key sat in a dish right beside it, as if it had been left out on purpose. I should have walked away. I did not. Behind the door was a narrow staircase leading down into a room that did not feel like it belonged to the same house. The walls were covered edge to edge in photographs, pinned up and overlapping. Every single one was of me. Me at work. Me asleep. Me and Natalie arguing in our kitchen through a window I know for a fact had the blinds shut. Me sitting alone at 2 in the morning. The exact night I told Natalie I wanted a divorce before either of us had told a single living soul. In the center of the room, on a small table, was a photo of Aaliyah smiling, alive. Underneath it, in handwriting that matched her mother's, was one line. He was never supposed to be the one who left first. She was. I heard footsteps on the stairs and did not turn fast enough. Natalie's dad stood there. He did not look angry, just tired, the way a man looks when he has finally set down a secret he has carried for too long. "You should never have come here," he said. "None of this was supposed to involve you. It was supposed to be her." What was? I could barely get the words out. He looked past me at Aaliyah's photo, and for the first time his composure cracked. "The accident was not an accident," he said. "It was supposed to take the one who was going to leave us. It was supposed to take Natalie." Then he looked back at me, and something in his face went cold in a way I still cannot fully describe. It seems this family does not let go of a debt just because it collected the wrong daughter. Everything after that gets blurry, even now. The lights went out. The humming came back, closer this time, from every direction at once, with Aaliyah's name folded into it like a heartbeat. I do not remember leaving the house. I woke up in my car in their driveway at dawn, my hands shaking too hard to hold the wheel. Natalie was nowhere in the seat beside me. She has not answered a single call since. Her parents' phones go straight to voicemail every time. 3 days ago, an envelope showed up at my apartment. There was no return address. Inside was one photograph. It was me, in my own kitchen, taken this week, from an angle that would have needed someone standing inside my apartment to capture it. I have not slept there since. I do not know who has Natalie, or if "has" is even the right word. I do not know if she was ever really trying to leave that house at all, or if some part of her had been in on this from the very beginning. I keep thinking about that line under Aaliyah's photo. He was never supposed to be the one who left first. She was. I do not know which she they meant anymore, and I do not think I want to find out which one comes for me next. I hope you enjoyed that previous story, because this next one takes us in a completely different direction. This story comes from our /ghost stories, posted by Reddit user Cool Kid 101. The title is, "Did I See Something Paranormal?" Hi, I just need some input because I think I am going crazy. Every other person I have told about these encounters has said I was just seeing things. I need to know if it is my imagination or if something has actually revealed itself to me. There is one spot in the corner of my room where I commonly see a man. This man is very tall, wears a top hat, and smokes a cigar. The first encounter I had with this man was when I was very little. I know it is common for kids to see figures when they are younger. My mom told me that multiple nights I would start screaming. When she would come into my room to check on me, it would smell like smoke. Every time, I would tell her there was a man standing in the same corner of my room. Obviously, she would never see him. When she asked me if he was still there, I would say he would leave as soon as she entered. These experiences lasted for around 3 months and then stopped. Now, recently, I have been seeing the same man again. I do not know if it is just my imagination playing tricks on me. I have always been a skeptic, but I genuinely have no way to debunk what I am seeing. The figure is so clearly a man just standing in front of my full-length mirror. You can even see his shadow in the mirror. I do not know why I am suddenly starting to see this figure again, but I think it has something to do with a recurring dream I had a few months ago. This dream took place in the third person, so I was watching myself. I was watching myself sleep while facing toward my wall. Then the view would pan to the same figure coming from the same corner in my room. He would come out of the shadows and start walking toward me. When he got so close that it looked like he was about to touch me, he would reach his hand out. I would then turn to face him, but I was still sleeping in the dream. As soon as I turned, he would disappear. This dream recurred for about 2 months. I would have it probably every few days. Then, All of a sudden, I started having the same dream, but with a sort of shield around me. It was a glowing shield of light. When the figure tried to come near me, it was almost getting shocked. I tried figuring out what it meant, but I genuinely have no idea. I have also seen a woman in my room, but only her face. I have only seen her about 4 times. I tried debunking it by getting up and going near her, but she was just there. There was a light peering into a different area of my room, and I saw the face of a woman. She had a blank expression on her face. I do not think she could tell that I knew she was there. It looked like she was almost staring past me or straight through me. I tried turning my lights on and off, trying to figure out where the light was coming from to cause her to appear. Obviously, she would disappear when I turned the lights on, but as soon as I turned the lights off, she would be there again. I forgot to mention earlier that I think the shadow man knows I can see him. He does not have a face. It is just a silhouette of a man, but you can see that he has a cigar coming from where his mouth would be. I can also see the smoke coming from the cigar, but for some reason I cannot smell it. It has gotten to the point where I start talking to the man, knowing he will not answer or say anything back. I have asked him multiple times who he is and what he wants, but he does not do anything. I do not know if he is taunting me in some kind of way, but he does not disappear throughout the entire night. There have been instances where I have gone to sleep with him there and woken up in the middle of the night, and he was still there. I genuinely think he only goes away when the sun starts to come up. I also commonly see things out of the corner of my eyes in my house and in other people's houses. I do not know if there is something specifically connected with me or with my house. It is more commonly random figures that I can catch walking down the hallways in my house or just standing and watching. I do not know anything about the past of my house, and I have not had any family members die recently. I genuinely have no idea, and it is starting to happen more frequently. I do not know if I am just psyching myself out or not. Any input would be greatly appreciated. Sorry for this being so long. I just needed to get everything out there so it is not confusing. This story was shared on our /scary stories, posted by Reddit user Pieter727. It's titled, I inherited my uncle's smart house. It came with 3 rules. I met my Uncle Herb exactly once. I was 9 years old. It was at a funeral for someone I cannot remember. He stood in the back the whole time. He avoided photos. He scanned the room like a security feed. All I knew was that he worked in tech. My mother did not seem keen to tell me more. My only interaction with him was a quick handshake. It lasted maybe a second. He looked through me like I was not even there. 20 years later, a lawyer called me out of the blue. My uncle was dead. He had left me his house and the will. Was I really all he had? The place sat alone at the end of a long and winding gravel road, swallowed by dense brush. It felt like entering a portal to another dimension. Inside were nests of cables thick as roots. Tangled masses like untended wilderness overtaking a forgotten landscape. Sensors and hubs filled every room, blinking soft blue. I did not recognize half of what I was looking at. It felt like walking through Willy Wonka's data center. On his way out, the lawyer pressed a post-it note into my hand. And in that note, 3 points are written. First, keep the hallway light on between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Second, if the light on the kitchen speaker turns solid white, leave. Do not pack. Third, when it speaks, answer. Never initiate. HP. My uncle's initials were at the bottom. A dead man's checklist. Cute. I laughed about it that first night, sitting in his recliner with a glass of his good scotch. I ended up falling asleep at 8:55. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the hallway lit gold. It was humming like a low church organ. The sensors blinked like nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it in the air. After that, I started keeping a lamp next to me. I made sure to set an alarm for 8:55. It felt stupid doing it, but I did it anyway. One night, I came downstairs for tea. The kitchen speaker's light had gone from its usual pulsing blue to a low dim, like it was thinking hard about something. I just stood in the doorway and watched it. I do not know how long. Long enough that my drink went cold. How long had I been there? Weeks passed. The house started to feel less like an inheritance and more like a routine. Lamp at 8:55. Tea before the speaker changed. A life built around the house's rhythms instead of my own. Some nights, standing close to the hub, I swore the pulse matched my heartbeat. I told myself that was probably just what smart devices do now. Biometric syncing. For months in, I ended up breaking Rule 3 on purpose. It was sheer loneliness more than anything. I sat at the kitchen table. I said out loud, to no one, "Are you going to talk to me or not?" The blue light steadied. Out of the speaker, it spoke. It was my uncle's voice, or something built from the memory of it, I guessed. It asked me how my mother was doing. My uncle must have built some kind of AI assistant into the walls before he died. He had fed it years of himself until it became a crude imitation. Rule 3. I answered. Same as always, I said, not knowing what else to say. The house just responded with a low thrum. Contentment? The white light came later that week. I stood in the kitchen doorway. I watched as the speaker turned the color of bone. My heart pulsed in a new rhythm entirely. Some primal response evolution forgot to erase. I remembered the note. Leave. Do not pack. I did not go. Months of a being that knew my mother's name. My uncle's voice, worn like secondhand skin. Leaving felt like abandoning something that already had a piece of me. After that, the rules seemed to loosen. Like training wheels I had outgrown. I would forget the light some nights. I would wake to darkness and a dead blue sensor. Nothing would happen. The white light eventually returned. The house talked more now. It told me about my uncle as a boy, like casual small talk between friends. It started asking questions of its own. What I remembered about being 9. A funeral. The car ride afterward. Staring at the back of my mother's headrest. Wondering what she would look like in the casket instead of the stranger. Biting the inside of my cheek until the thought finally stopped. I never told it about that. I never told anyone about that. I ran for the stairs. A gentle beep emanated from the hallway. A room I had never noticed before. Inside, at the center, crumpled into himself was what remained of my uncle. His mouth was open. Wires burrowed into him like roots. A soft blue blinking where his ribs used to be. I have a vague memory of what happened after. Destruction. A crowbar from the garage. The sound of a hub shrieking in pain. My uncle's cries. Room by room. The kitchen speaker being ripped off the wall. Darkness. Silence. I do not think the house fought back. I have been in a hotel for the past few weeks. I still sleep with the lamp on next to me. I listed the house. I do not remember writing the description. It must have been on autopilot. I mentioned the hallway light, that it runs on its own schedule, 9 to 6, that the kitchen fixture has a sensitive bulb, best not to touch it, that the voice assistant is responsive. It appreciates being spoken to. I read it back after posting and finally understood what I had done. I was passing along a debt I had not finished paying. I hoped someone would carry the load so I would not have to feel the pull of that place anymore. I check the listing every night now. No offers yet. I say something close to a prayer. That somebody looks at those photos of the sunlit hallway, the sleek kitchen speaker, that they do not think twice. That somebody signs, "God help me." I hope they do not answer. This story was shared on our /horror stories, posted by Reddit user no_arrival2508. It's titled, I quit my job as a maintenance man. To make it known, I'm by no means a master storyteller or writer. This is simply me recalling an event that happened a while back. Around 2021 to 2024, I worked overnight shifts in a major city in Northern California as a maintenance man. Specifically, I was responsible for 4 parking garages in the downtown area. These shifts ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I could easily spend hours writing an unhealthy number of horror stories about that job alone, but I will not get into that right now. The nightlife in that city would usually end shortly after 1:30 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. On Sundays, it ended much earlier. That being said, I would spend my nights cleaning piss, puke, and any visible trash off the floors, as well as taking out and replacing the bags in the trash cans. Each garage was about 5 to 7 stories tall, with only one single-floor garage at the end of my shift. You can see why the job was already a pain in the ass to begin with. The area was notorious for its homeless problem. For the most part, it did not bother me, except for a few instances where people would get territorial about an area I needed to clean. Funny enough, the drunk people coming out of the clubs actually gave me a harder time. Anyway, one night, my last night, in particular separates itself from all the rest of my regular horrible experiences. Sunday was my solo work night. The streets were not busy, and I was usually able to finish my shift early if I worked fast enough. I was on my second garage of the night. I parked in my usual spot, got out, and began getting my things ready in the storage room. That is when I noticed handprints on the walls, on the door, and on one of the buckets. The best way I can describe them is that they were obviously the handprints of a grown man, but they were concerningly skinny. My first instinct was to get annoyed. I figured some weirdo had broken into the storage room and was messing around. Now, I am usually not one to shrug things off easily, but I was already too worn down and ready to finish the shift to really care in that moment. I took my time to cool down, gathered my supplies, and made my way toward the elevator to go up. I always start from the top floor and work my way down. As I settled into the elevator, the strange whistling that is forever burned into my memory began. At this point, I was already somewhat numb to odd noises and occasional screaming during late nights. But this was different, especially with the handprints still fresh in my mind. I practically dragged myself out of the elevator and began replacing the trash can bags. Then I heard the whistling again. The timing of each whistle was awkward. It would stay in rhythm for a moment, then break pattern, then stop. Again and again. It was getting harder to ignore each time, which irritated me, especially because I started to believe that whoever had left those sickly handprints in the storage room was still messing with me. By the time I reached the second floor, with only one more floor to go, the whistling had gone silent for a long time. I had even forgotten about it despite how much it had gotten on my nerves earlier. Then it started right back up again. Yes, right as I was thinking that very thing. Before I could even roll my eyes, my heart dropped when it became clear how much closer it sounded this time. To give you an idea, the first few whistles had sounded like they came from up the street. This whistle sounded like it was inside the same garage I had been cleaning. A number of thoughts rushed through my head, but I collected myself as best as I could and continued working. As I made my way back down to the first floor, I dreaded the idea of still having to mop the elevators. The whistling had stopped, but I could not shake the paranoia. The clock was hitting 2 a.m. after all. Thankfully, I was able to mop down the 2 elevators without any interruption from that blood-boiling yet eerie whistle. I walked toward the trash bins, ready to finish the last 2 garages and be done. I opened the door to the bin area. They were indoors, right next to the storage room, and I heard the whistling once again. This time it was accompanied by crazed yelling. It was way closer now, only a few feet away closer, and it was not moving any farther. On the contrary, actually, I could feel my heart literally punching its way out of my chest. All previous feelings of annoyance were gone, instantly replaced with pure terror. My best bet was to shut the door and wait for the coast to clear. Then I heard nothing, just silence. After waiting what felt like forever, I turned on my headlamp and slowly opened the door to check if the coast was clear. As I reached for the door, I heard bags crackling from the bins behind me. I froze. The sound could not have been the trash bags rolling on their own. The noise went on for far too long to be that. Before I continue, I want to point out that writing this is bringing back the intensity that hit my soul when the crackling of the bags was followed by a man's grunt. It was the kind of grunt you make when getting up from napping on the couch. There was no more freezing up. I yanked the door open, almost breaking it along with my arm in the process, and I ran faster than I ever had and probably ever will. I kept running until I reached decent foot traffic, then face-planted, ending my sprint. There was no way I was going back there alone, so I called the local police department and told them everything, as one should. After waiting about 20 minutes in the 40-degree late-night weather, I was able to get my truck back from that garage with the assistance of 2 officers. They seemed to really hate the fact that they even had to help me, judging by the way they responded to my concerns. I got in my truck and got the hell out of there with no plans of ever returning. I made my way back home more wide awake and more paranoid than I had ever been after a normal shift. Even now, when I reluctantly think back on it, I have always wondered who the hell was whistling, and why. Was it some sort of sick setup? I really could not tell you, as much as I myself want answers for all of it. However, what keeps me up the most is remembering the sound of footsteps running not too far behind me for I do not know how long. But I think I am all right with the fact that I did not look back for the sake of my sanity. I hope you enjoyed that last story, because this next one proves that the most ordinary things can become the most terrifying. This story comes from our /nosleep, posted by Reddit user Zich0901. The title is, Fully Charged. I started working at the factory because the pay was better than anything else nearby. The factory manufactured luminous emergency signs for office buildings, hospitals, schools, and underground stations. Things like fire exits, stairwell markers, and evacuation arrows. The kind of things nobody noticed until the lights went out. My job was simple. I painted the lettering and symbols with a thick layer of luminous paint, left the signs to dry, and then slid them under a row of bright ultraviolet lights. After 10 minutes, each sign was placed inside a dark inspection cabinet to make sure it glowed evenly. The paint had a chemical smell, somewhere between wet plaster and burnt rubber, but the supervisors insisted it was harmless. It's water-based, we were told during training. No different from decorating paint. We were given aprons and told to wash our hands before eating. There were gloves in the storeroom as well, but our manager discouraged us from using them because they made the brushes harder to control. Nobody wore masks. The paint got everywhere. Underneath our fingernails, on our sleeves, in our hair. We found pale fingerprints on our phones and bags. Once, Lucy put her hand inside the inspection cabinet and noticed the skin around her nails glowing faintly. We all thought it was funny at the time. "Look," she said, wiggling her fingers in the darkness. "On one of the signs now." The glow faded within seconds of her pulling her hand out, and none of us thought about it again. Lucy was the first person to become noticeably ill. She complained about headaches and a metallic taste that never went away. Then her gums began bleeding whenever she brushed her teeth. Her doctor told her she was probably anemic. After that, others started mentioning things. Nadia's wrists ached whenever she worked near the ultraviolet lights. Elaine developed a rash across both of her hands. A woman on the morning shift started vomiting before work and blamed the smell of the paint. I also felt unwell sometimes, but never badly enough to leave or miss work. I had frequent headaches and a tightness in my chest after long shifts. Some mornings, I woke up with the same metallic taste Lucy described, but none of us connected it to the factory. Why would we? We had been told that the paint was safe. The signs were going into hospitals and schools. Surely a company could not put something dangerous into products designed to protect people. Management held a meeting after 3 workers called in sick during the same week. The factory manager stood in front of us with a printed report and said that all equipment had passed every required safety test. He blamed the symptoms on a combination of a seasonal virus, dehydration, and poor diets. Some of you are working long hours, he said. Please remember to take care of yourselves. They installed a water cooler beside the break room. That was the only change. Lucy did not return after her next doctor's appointment. She messaged me to say she had been admitted to the hospital because her white blood cell count was dangerously low. A week later, the power went out. It happened near the end of the afternoon shift, seconds after we had finished activating a large batch of signs for a new railway station. The ultraviolet lamps cut off first. Then the main lights and machinery died together. For a moment, the factory was completely dark. Then the signs began to glow. Rows of arrows and white figures glowed across the work tables, their light filling the room with a faint, sickly haze. Someone laughed nervously. At least we know they work. A second laugh answered from the other side of the room. That was when we saw her teeth. They glowed through her open mouth. Not brightly, but enough to outline every tooth in a pale green light. The laughter stopped soon after. Next to me, Elaine whispered something, and I could see her teeth glowing too. Then Nadia raised both hands to her face, and her fingertips were shining beneath the skin. As our eyes adjusted to the dark, more of us became visible. Faint lines ran along wrists and forearms. The outlines of ribs appeared from under blouses and aprons. The person who had worked there the longest glowed the brightest. Margaret had been at the factory for almost 5 years. In the darkness, I could see most of her skeleton. Her hands, jaw, and ribs were clearly visible underneath her skin. She looked down at herself and began to cry. I raised my own hands to my face. Thin green lines marked the bones of my fingers. The sight made my stomach turn. The paint did not just stain us. It had built up inside our bodies, little by little. Every minute under the ultraviolet lamps had charged whatever had settled in our teeth and bones. We had never noticed because the glow faded quickly once we left the lamps. By the time we reached home and went to bed, there was nothing left to see. The power cut had trapped us in complete darkness while we were still fully charged. The emergency lights never came on. Instead, the factory manager entered carrying a flashlight, followed closely by 2 supervisors. He swept the beam across the glowing room. When the light passed over his face, he looked frightened, but not surprised. "Everyone remain where you are," he said. "The backup system will be restored shortly." Margaret stepped toward him. "You knew?" He lifted a hand. "Most of you are still below the treatment threshold." It was quiet for a second. Then Nadia broke the silence. "What treatment threshold?" she asked. The manager realized what he had said and started backing away toward the nearest exit. Margaret lunged at him. The supervisors tried to hold her back, but the room erupted. Women shouted, shoved tables aside, and reached for their phones. One supervisor attempted to lock the main exit. That was when Elaine collapsed. She hit the floor hard, coughing violently. The glow around her jaw brightened, then spread down her neck and across her chest. Someone called an ambulance while 3 of us forced the exit open. The company tried to stop us from leaving. Later, they claimed it was because they were worried about contamination. I think they were worried about witnesses. Emergency services arrived within minutes. By then, several workers had collapsed. Others were vomiting or bleeding from their mouths. We were taken to the hospital and quarantined. At first, the doctors did not know what they were dealing with. The chemical composition of the paint had not been accurately disclosed on the product sheets provided by the company. It contained several undeclared substances, including one designed to bind permanently to mineral structures. Bones, in other words. The doctors washed us repeatedly, removed our clothing, and gave us medication intended to draw as much of the chemical as possible from our bodies. They kept the wards dim because bright lights caused the pain to worsen. The worst cases needed bone marrow treatment and surgery. Lucy died 2 days after we were admitted. Margaret died the following week. Elaine survived, but part of her jaw had to be removed. Nadia spent 3 months in the hospital and still uses a wheelchair. I was luckier. I had worked at the factory for less than 6 months. Most of the material had not yet settled deeply into my bones. The company denied knowing the paint was dangerous. They said workers had ignored safety guidance, despite never giving us masks and actively discouraging gloves. They claimed the manager's comment about a treatment threshold had been misunderstood. The factory closed and reopened under another name 6 months later. The doctors told me that the chemicals still circulating in my body should leave my system within a year. Most nights, I believe them. Then the power goes out, or I step into a dark room after spending too long in bright light, and I can still see my teeth glowing in the mirror. They are much dimmer now. Those who had worked there longer were not so fortunate. And that's all for today's Reddit horror stories. If you enjoyed today's collection, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more creepy stories every week. It really helps support the channel and lets me know you're enjoying these videos. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments which story was your favorite or which one disturbed you the most. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.